So welcome to this celebration here. We've got two incredible sixth grade classes from Forest Grove Elementary. We have our amazing individual here, Michel Mockers, for us to share our story of his life and the unveiling of the student's graphic novel of his life, which he has yet to see the beautiful artwork, which we're going to unveil here today, as well as give an opportunity to hear from him himself. So as we begin this, just a couple reminders as we get going here in the call and with the session. Just that one thing, to stay muted, to respect our presenters and speakers. We do have a chat, so while we're going through this, we have a session for Q&A at the end. So while students are presenting, or if Michelle shares some things and you have some questions, feel free to put that in the chat, along with anything positive for the students. You know, this is a celebration of learning and a celebration of Michelle as well. And just know that at the end, we will have some Q&A after we unveil our comic of Michel Mockers. And last and most importantly, let's cherish this moment in history. It's a wonderful opportunity for all these students that are in this room today to share their work with Michel and all of you. The agenda really quick. We're going to have students pretty much run this show today with some introductions here in just a second. We'll have a few words from Deb Bowen, who you'll get to know here in just a minute. A few of the student impact statements, the unveiling of the comic, some words from Michel, and then an opportunity for some Q&A as we go. As we do that, you know, just to remind and acknowledge so many things in order for a project like this to happen. It's not just the students themselves, and even there, enough is enough. I know you can't see all of them at this point, but you will here in just a second. But these students are absolutely phenomenal, as well as the leaders of the classroom, the two teachers, and all the support within the school. You know, the bravery to do this work, make this stuff happen. And so just to acknowledge that none of this happens in isolation. And I know we have a few of these people in the call, and this is just a small list of many experts that have given up time from their work, their jobs, their lives to help these students in their learning journey. So I know we won't have time to break every part of the project down, but I think it's important to acknowledge some of these people that helped us. Starting in the upper left, we've had Danielle, who helped us how to craft stories from NPR. Allison O'Toole is in the comic publishing industry, and I know she's on the call here today. Kelsey in the upper right is from our local art museum, helping us understand art and propaganda art. We've got Elsa, who is a comic publisher and artist for DC and Image and Marvel. Claire, also another comic editor and publisher that helped us. And then Deb and her team from A Book by Me, which will lead us to, when Deb talks, the official publication of this book. Just so you have a sense of how these things began for everybody listening, because I know you didn't get a chance to be in the classroom all day, every day. This is an essential driving question that these students were after to try to answer. How can we reflect on the past to change the present for a better future? And we were beyond fortunate enough to connect and learn from Michel, his story, talk with him, speak with him, ask questions, and had the honor to then tell his life story through a comic. And so with that being said, we want to turn it over to the kids for the next opportunity to run this. And so we're excited to share our work, and I hope you enjoy it. And again, we'll work through, share a couple things, share our comic, and then open up to some Q&A and conversation.
Hello and welcome to our event celebrating Mr. Mockers. We are sixth graders from Forest Grove Elementary School in Bettendorf, Iowa. We believe in engaging in real and meaningful work. When we do this kind of work, we see the possibility and potential in ourselves, in others, and in the world around us.
We wanted to share Michel Mocker's story because we felt it was one many children our age need to hear. This is a story of bravery, perseverance, and freedom. We started to see different truths about World War II and realized it was complex and there were many layers within the system. Learning about Michel and the French resistance gave us insight into what it really means to champion humanity, putting others' ambitions before ourselves.
As authors, we really tried to focus on what most mattered to Michel. This was not a responsibility that we took lightly. Interviews with Michel helped us at first. to understand who he is as a human. In order to be accurate and reliable with our writing, it was important for us to clarify and understand every detail within his story. To help us with the arts of the comic, we had help with with the help of the comic artists from around the globe, we were able to create a visual story for our readers as well.
As learners, we want to thank Deb and A Book by Me for trusting us to bring this story to life. We would also like to thank the experts who met with us and helped guide us through this process. We would also like to thank Mr. Welch and Mr. Maurer for allowing us to be the agents of our own learning, believing we are capable of doing meaningful work that matters. This experience has reshaped our heads and our hearts and has taught us power is meant to be handled generously, so we can thoughtfully empower one another to thrive in our communities, championing humanity before our ambitions. Thank you for attending. We hope you enjoy our work.
So we would like to kick it over to Deb Bowen here for an opportunity to share, because without her and building these connections, none of this happens. We don't get the wonderful opportunity to meet Michel, for these students to have this authentic learning experience. And so I have asked to Deb to be able to share a few words here to both introduce Michel and also say a few things about A Book by Me. And so, Deb, if you could unmute yourself and let you share your insights and magic.
Thank you, Aaron. And Michel, your smile today is making my whole day. It is great to see you. So hello to you, Michel, and hello to all the students who worked so hard on this powerful story. Also, hello to all the hardworking teachers that I know were behind the scenes and all the guests that are here. I am the founder of Understanding Works, which is a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to assist students in being actively engaged in works that improve their communities while developing an understanding of compassion and the benefits of performing acts of kindness. So in other words, we are helping them step into someone else's shoes using 3 different projects. First, a storytelling project called A Book by Me. They stepped into your shoes, Michel. Secondly, a purse project called Love Like Lorraine Purses with Purpose, where we donate gently used purses filled with items everyone needs to women in shelters, at alternative schools, and surprise gifts at the food pantry. Last, an international project to help kids in developing countries with educational programming, clean water projects, or everyday needs like buying chickens for schools so kids can eat eggs and have protein every day. Many kids I know in Africa eat just 1 time a day. This one is called Love Like Lorraine World Changers. I want to take you back 20 years to the very first book project about a Holocaust survivor named Esther Averick. She had never told her story before, and she wanted to do it desperately. She was excited about the prospect of piloting this book project, but she was scared she might cry. And we had long conversations about that, and we decided that it would be okay if she did, but it still bothered her that she might cry in public. So we were at a small school, a small private school. I felt that was best. And the class was about, I would say, somewhere between 8 and 12 kids. I can't remember exactly, but they were wonderful. I sat in the front of the classroom behind Esther, where she was speaking, and the teacher was in the back of the room behind the students. And about midway through her story, which was a very difficult story to tell, she lost her entire family, she began to cry. And I waited a few seconds to see what the kids would do, and they all stood up and surrounded her with this giant group hug. And I think they were there for at least a solid 2 minutes, just hugging her. And then she thanked them and told them that she was okay, and she was able to finish. And it was at that moment that I understood something powerful had just happened. And I understood that it was more than just a beautiful history lesson. It was also a lesson in teaching empathy. And those kids passed with flying colors. And I think from what's already been said today, Michel, I think they put themselves in your shoes and they gained empathy as well. So I'm excited about that. Over these last 20 years, there have been well over 100 interviews. Each provide a different look at history and builds a better understanding for children. I've always said that I'm asking ordinary students to do something extraordinary. I have to say that the past 2 years with Aaron Maurer and his teachers have been a way of taking extraordinary to a whole new level. Today, I get the honor of giving a short intro to Michel's story. I first met him through a mutual friend, an educator in Canada. At the same time, I was talking to Aaron Maurer about the special project for this school year. You know, the rest is history. So Michel's story starts with a very young Michel Mockers. He had a normal life with his family in Paris, France. Prior to World War II, it was a very peaceful city, a beautiful city. Thanks to the Nazis, Paris was soon under siege, leaving Michel, his family, and friends no rights of their own. Michel and his brother Christian made the decision to go to the southern part of France, which was known as Free France, to learn how they might help fight the Nazis. They crossed a river at a shallow point they knew well. They traveled to their Uncle Peter's inn, where they helped him with everyday chores. After 3 months, Michel and Christian decided they wanted to be part of the brave acts they heard were being done during this time of war. It took a lot of courage to stand up for their country. It was going to be dangerous, and they knew it. One sunny day, the brothers were sitting on a big stone. Christian and Michel decided their fate. Christian pulled a coin out of his pocket and tossed it into the air. That's how it was decided that Christian would go to England and become a member of the Special Air Service, while Michel would stay in France and become part of the French resistance. So this story you're about to hear started with a coin toss by two very brave young men in France a very long time ago. Personally, I'm very honored to have this story as part of the Book by Me collection. Michel, yours is the first voice for someone in the French resistance in this series. I'm so happy we met and your story impacted so many students. I look forward to the day it's a book officially published and it's in your hands and in the hands of many readers. We will be working on it all summer. God bless you, sir, and all the kids who worked so hard to make sure your story is not forgotten. Thank you.
Beautiful. That's very nice.
And Deb, as we build off here, and we're going to hear from the students here the impact of Michel's story on them. I know we were looking back through all the stuff when we started many months ago, and this quote always stuck with me from the very beginning. So the impact's not just with students, it's with all of us. And I remember in our first interview, we were talking with Michel, and we were trying to work through some logistics. And Michel, you had your quick wits and humor that you have. I never forget this line when you're like, "Sure, please take your time. At my age, you can take all the time you want." And I knew right there we had something really special, just who you are, your character and demeanor. And with that being said, we have on the website, and we'll share this out afterwards, every student has written a impact statement of how this work has impacted them as people, not just students, but as an individual. And for the sake of time, we've highlighted a few of them, but we want everybody to know that every single student's impact statement is available to be seen, and Michel will make sure we share that with you as well as everyone else. And so at this point, we want to share a few impact statements before we dive into the story of Michel.
Hi, my name is Brooke, and this is what I took away from this once-in-a-lifetime work. I believe that showing up to this work changes perspectives. When we have a real experience to write an accurate human story, we have the power to show others the impact of courage and how to stand up for what is right. This opportunity has helped me understand my capability and be a catalyst for change.
Hi, I'm Zach, and this is what I thought about the work that we did. This experience has given me a new way of thinking about World War II. I'm so glad that I got a voice in the work that we did. I'm thankful for the opportunity I got to talk to a human that is so valuable and so talked about in our world. This gift of his story that he gave us reshaped me. There's a place in my heart where his truth lives, and even though it hurts, we need that hurt sometimes so it doesn't happen again.
Hi, my name is Ellie, and this is how this experience impacted me. This project gave me a whole new understanding of the impact a human story can give. By witnessing the true humbleness of someone so great through the interviews, I was inspired to honor Michel with the best of my writing and illustrating abilities. Michel's spoken words, facial expressions, and body language conveyed the power of emotion to my work and allowed me to dig deeper. This real experience has connected me to Michel. I will never forget participating in this book.
Hi, I'm Liam, and this is what I think was important to me during this impactful work. I had a unique opportunity to work with Michel Mockers to grow my understanding of human stories and how they are powerful. Learning about Michel's trials and tribulations as a French resistance fighter has helped build empathy within myself. His story is impactful because it inspires people to do good even when faced with impossible odds. Doing these purposeful projects adds value to my learning journey and expands my knowledge of real life work.
So now it's time. We're going to position ourselves here in just a second to unveil our work. But as we do that, Deb gave a little bit of an introduction of Michel. But one thing to note, we will have this on the website by the end of the day. We have an education version of our graphic novel in which we have the students thinking behind all their artwork. And we'll pull this out in the email, but I like to highlight it here as well for twofold of things that are really powerful in this work, in this comic, the education version that you'll receive. One, there's a QR code that goes with all the students thinking and their process of how they came up with the artwork. So you can hear the students talking about their work. And there's a QR code at the bottom of each of those pages with your child or whoever the affiliation might be. We also have something really incredible as well. On the page of the comic book itself, where the kids have completed the illustrations and the words, there is a QR code where Michel was gracious enough to read the words. So Michel has read the words. He hasn't seen the artwork, but we have an audio version of this book courtesy of Michel. And so his voice is forever preserved, not just his story, but his voice as well. And we'll remind you of that in the email going out. But these are two things that we feel are really, really powerful, both in the impact of the learning and also to capture Michel's voice. And with that being said, before we kick over to the comic, Deb's introduced Michel a little bit, and we have a couple of students here to further introduce the context of Michel and the placement so the comic makes some sense.
Michel Mockers was born on December 17, 1922, in Nantes, France. His parents were George and Elizabeth, and his brothers were Christian and Jean. In 1941, World War II was raging through France. Michel Mockers and his brother Christian decided to fight for the freedom of their country. At this time, he was in his early 20s and was living in a village near Verdun. As Christian went off to join the British SAS, Michel joined a British mission to create a strong and determined group of French resistance fighters. Through his bravery and effective leadership skills, Michel's resistance group was a powerful force against the Nazi Germans.
To this day, Michel has many talents, including painter, sculptor, writer, and video producer. He has 2 books in Library of Congress and has written his memoirs in a book called Renee's War. Michel has received many awards for his bravery and service to France, one being the Legion of Honor, which is France's highest award to any person.
We're going to segue over to our comic and unveil our work here to all of you, and more importantly, to Michel, so he can see how the students have told his story. And then after that, we will hear from Michel himself, because I know him and I know he has probably just a few words to share. So let me segue over to our comic.
Michel Mockers, the resistance fighter who never quit. Michel Mockers had a normal life with his mother, father, and 2 younger brothers in Paris, a once peaceful city in France. However, with World War II in full force, Paris was now under siege by Nazis, leaving Michel and his family and friends with no voice or rights of their own.
Due to this situation, Michel and his brother, Christian, made the decision to go to the southern part of France, also known as Free France, to help fight against the Nazis. Although the line of demarcation was under the watchful eyes of the Germans, Christian and Michel managed to cross into Free France by fording a river at a shallow point in Nouvelle.
They had crossed it before on their way to their grandmother's village near Bazan. Michel and Christian ended up traveling to La Sainte-Foy to their Uncle Peter's inn, where they stayed and helped him with everyday tasks as they decided what to do with their future.
And they did a lot, huh?
After 3 long months, Michel and Christian decided that they wanted to fulfill their future by taking part in a brave act during this time of war.
They both wanted to do something to stand up for their country and people. They were going to fight for France.
Sitting outside on a big round stone in the warm, early morning sun, Michel and Christian decided their fate. Christian pulled a coin out of his pocket and tossed it up into the air.
That is where it was decided that Christian would go to England and eventually become a member of the SAS, Special Air Service, while Michel would stay in France.
Michel only had one thought in mind, which was to help his country in some way. A few days later, Christian left on the bus. As the bus took a turn around the corner, Michel nearly began to cry.
As Michel struggled with what to do for France, he volunteered in the Chantier des Jeunes, a youth services organization. They did not carry weapons, so they were tolerated by the Germans. He remained in the Chantier until he got notice that he was going to be required to leave the following day. Michel was going to be sent to a work camp in Germany. To avoid this, he left in the middle of that same night, silently running on his socks with his clothes in his arms.
Michel was quickly put in contact by a friend, Father Valouche, with a British mission that was settling in the Chateau des Souches. Unexpectedly, the chateau was only 2 or 3 kilometers away from his grandmother's village near Verzon.
At the same time Michel found safety, Daniel, someone everyone in the village knew, was arrested by the Nazis without justification. Shocked and angry, the British mission would prove to be exactly what Michel was looking for.
The British mission, including members Pearl, Peter, and Thomas, aided Michel in starting a resistance movement. The problem was that Michel's group had no weapons. 2 weeks later, two British planes dropped 5 big containers with their first armaments.
Later, out of nowhere, a young French-speaking lady told Michel that her name was Suzanne and that she had settled in a house in the village. This Suzanne also told Michel that she was representing a British mission and that she needed Michel's help.
Information that Suzanne gave out made Michel feel uneasy, so he rushed to Pearl to tell her what he had heard. Pearl said that it was impossible to have 2 British missions in the same territory and at the same time. A plan was created to take care of the issue of Suzanne.
You would tell the story. It's good.
Michel, along with his fellow resistance fighters, Eugene and Mark, stormed Suzanne's house. She had said the house belonged to her family, but they knew better. They told Suzanne they knew she was Nazi German, and she threatened them and said she would disassemble any resistance she could get her hands on. That was the last anyone saw of Suzanne. As time passed, the Germans were getting angrier and angrier, and the resistance continued to build. This led the Germans to ambush the resistance at their home base, the chateau. In their fury, the Germans burned the chateau to the ground and attacked the men of the resistance, killing 4.
When the resistance fighters discovered the chateau burned to the ground and their dead men, they were full of shock and gained even more resentment toward the Nazis. What trouble could they cause the Germans next?
Pearl learned that 3 American airmen had been shot down at Verzon. They needed to be rescued from a farm that was 40 miles away. Michel found the airmen dressed as French farm boys. He only had time to teach them how to properly say oui and non before they needed to get out of German territory. On their journey to safety, he noticed a small house with a sign that read Cafe.
Hungry and thirsty, Michel and the airmen checked out the vicinity, and at first glance it appeared safe, with nothing in sight. They entered the cafe and walked right into a room full of Germans.
They quickly chose a table near the door and acted like farmers talking about their cows.
When they left, they were still nervous, so they kept their cover well after they were out the door. They had good fortune on their side that day, but it was surely a close call.
That's cute.
Michel was a British officer, so he was not allowed to partake in acts of war for the French. When Michel discovered there was a train transporting 300 Senegalese soldiers, he put Mark in command of attack the train and rescue them from the Nazis.
Mark's car of choice for his missions was a Traction Revolt Citron, as this car was used regularly by the Germans, so it was an effective way to stay incognito.
The attack of the train was a success, and the Senegalese soldiers were delivered by Mark's men to his camp. Michel and Mark went to pay a visit to Petit Louis, a French farmer. Petit Louis sold Michel one of his cows. Mark shot it down with his gun, and they hung it on a beam. He cleaned it as they seen people do to rabbits. Later, Mark carried up the cooked meat to feed the Senegalese soldiers. After all were fed, they waited for their next mission.
At the castle of Valence, Michel asked the Germans leave without a fight.
As the Germans retreated, they left behind a heavy suitcase. It popped open. Grenades!
To Michel's surprise, they did not blow up. Luck was on his side. Michel's final act of war occurred when 18,000 Germans requested to surrender to an Allied officer. Back at the mission, Pearl signed the surrender of the German general.
From mouth to ear, Michel received a message that a man named Daniel was returning from a German concentration camp. Michel was asked to pick him up at the train station.
Michel and Mark only knew one Daniel. It was because of Daniel's unjustified arrest that Michel created a group of resistance fighters. As the train arrived, Daniel was supported by 2 nurses. "I am happy to see you," he said with difficulty through toothless gums.
The Germans broke all of my teeth out one by one with a screwdriver to make me say what I knew about the resistance. But I knew nothing. I had nothing to tell them.
There was no resistance.
That's cute.
We hope you enjoyed the story. Our final page tells us a bit about Mr. Mockers, but first we would like to start with a few of his powerful quotes. Do what you feel like doing. Follow your values and beliefs. I earned the medal for all of the people standing behind me, even with all of them dead now. You have your own ideas and fight for your ideas when the circumstances come to life. You have to make your mind for what you believe in, what you love, and when you love something, you stand by it.
Even at the age of 100, Michel still enjoys sharing his experiences with people around the globe. One way he shares his journey is through his memoirs in René's War. Michel opens up about what he experienced during the French resistance and how he helped his country. He also has 2 books in the Library of Congress.
Michel has received multiple awards of service from the French and British governments, including the highest French medal that the government can get, the Legion of Honor. Michel is also an accomplished artist, sculptor, musician, and scholar. These are just some of the many talents and achievements in his life. Michel is a very passionate person while still putting others before his own ambitions. He is never afraid to state what he values and believes.
And that there is the work of these incredible 6th grade students and the incredible life story of Michel Mockers told through their comic book. So what we would like to do, Michel, is put you in the hot seat. I don't know if you have anything to say or share or any questions you have, but we want to make sure this is much of a celebration of you as it is for the students' work. And so we thought we would give the mic over to you because I know you probably don't go this long, this quiet, because I know you like to talk.
Can I talk now?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So, you know, for me to watch your little students and what they did is something absolutely wonderful. I didn't do what I did during the war for myself, you know, but today, so many years after that war, that still student, and I hope that all the students in the world, not because it's me, but because I fought in the name of all the students for them to have a clean future. You know, I thought, in fact, when I thought to throw the Germans out of France, is because they were imposing their laws, and we cannot accept that. We were ourselves, like you are yourself, and the most thing that comes out of that resistance is precisely that you must resist when it doesn't please you, when it's imposed upon you what you think are the wrong ideas. You must fight for your ideas. You must not be afraid of fighting, because it's how the world will eventually be. I hope that, in fact, I would like to see the whole world in your class. You know, it will be a lot of people, but nevertheless, I would like to see all the young people your age listening. It's not because it's me, it's only because I am in some ways telling a story that was not particularly mine. So, but it is to hope that more and more students are able to do what you do. And I found that is absolutely wonderful. And I thank you, every one of you, for listening to me and taking, I hope, a lesson out of it.
Well, we can't thank you enough for the opportunity, and the same likewise to Deb. What we would like to do at this point, because we do have a lot of people in the call, if you have questions for the students or for Michel, or Deb for that matter, if you want to put them in the chat, or if you would like to come off mute, you can. It might be easier to organize it through the chat, but if you want to have a question or make a statement, we want to make sure we have an opportunity, because I know we've got several people on this call, and this is an awesome opportunity to further connect with the kids or with Michel. So we'll give people here a chance if you want to put a question in or come off mic, and see what people have at this point.
I will be always very happy to answer any question. So anyone who asks me any question can come out and ask me what he has in mind. Huh? So go ahead. Come on. Nobody has any question?
Michel, maybe you could explain a little bit too. I know we've touched upon the incredible honor you received from France for your service. Do you want to talk a little bit about that medal that you received, for maybe those that are not aware of that incredible recognition?
You know that is the highest French reward. Nothing is above that, and very few people have it, and very few military people have it. I am lucky enough to have it. Lucky, it's not a question to be lucky. I have it, the French government give it to me. You know, the French government gave me that because I maybe are the last officer of the French resistance. You know, the French resistance was something that came out, I should say, by itself. When we had the possibility to be armed, we fought the Germans, but it was not something that was prepared in advance. It's something, you know, when things happen, you must answer the things that happens. And we answer like that. And once more, even if I had, because I am, once more, I am maybe the last one of the 3 officers of the resistance. You know, I am 100 years old, so that's not very young, and it was a few years ago, you know. But I just say once more that it is wonderful that all of you listen to my story, because you would be eventually, every one of you would eventually be obliged to go through the same story. You never can know what the future is made of, so fight to have a future of peace instead of a future of war. You know, for me, it took me, when I was 18 years old, 20 years old, let's say, which is exactly the time where you start to think about life. Instead of thinking about life, I have to think about how can I throw the Germans out of my country to be free. So to be free is the most important thing. It allows you to think. And if you think, you will think right, and you will keep your country in the right way. And I hope that more and more, and I should say that I would like the whole country follow your example.
Thank you for that, Michel. We appreciate it. And we're starting to get some questions in here. And I think the first one that's come through is for you. And it comes from Stacy. And she's asking, when it came to the war, what was the scariest part, or what were some of the parts that created the most fear for you? And then we'll answer the questions from Anne and Tanya next year.
Yes, they can ask questions, you know, we'll try to answer the best I can, my dear. So you can ask the question, because they may have some obscure point or ideas that I can eventually put some light on all that.
Yep. So the first question for you, Michel, comes in asking, what was the scariest part of the war for you?
What was the
scariest part?
Oh, my dear, it was It was to be. You never know. I was crazy at that time. Crazy, I mean nicely crazy. I never hesitated to do what I suppose I was supposed to do to help the French resistance. No, every step, every move that I was doing under the German, watching over. So the big thing, maybe the biggest thing at that time was to figure out who was for the Germans and who was not for the Germans, I mean the French people, because you could talk to somebody who was going just to give you to the Germans. And except for a few people, you were sure that they were not for the Germans. Many times I had to deal with people that eventually were talking to the Germans. It was a very, figure out what you were meeting, who you were talking about, and where was the truth. And beside that, when I found all the men fighting in the woods, after that, I had to feed them. I became the one who feed them in two ways: feed them to eat and feed them with armaments. So I had to go across all the Germans everywhere. And, it was taking a chance. I was never sure that I would succeed. Every time I was taking a chance, it happened that I picked up the right thing, and I am with you today. But I had as many chances not to be with you than to be with you.
Thank you for answering that, Michel. We've got another question, and this one I think is for the students. And this comes from Anne, asking about students, what were the primary sources used besides interviewing Michel? And so we've got a couple of students that we're going to come up and answer that question for you, Anne. So let's get these guys up and address the sources we use to help put the story together.
So,
what is the question? Go ahead.
Okay, so
first grade.
Some of the primary sources we used were some of his interviews, and those interviews everybody in the class took notes and wrote down powerful words, powerful quotes. We also used photos from the Library of Congress and to make sure our pictures were accurate in the story. We also used some from the Imperial War Museum. And then Liam will do the rest.
From his book Renee's War was a big one for us because we used quotes from him and what his story was, and how it impacted him.
Take a little loud, a little lower, a little louder. Take a little loud, a little more.
We used his book Renee's War, and it gave us actual insight about what happened to him as he fought in the war.
Yeah, you know, so you know what you can find in the book is eventually surprising. You're not used with that type of adventures. You know, but it was more than an adventures because it was life of people, you know, life of people at stake, in fact, all the time. And the book tells some stories where there were some people who died, you know, like in the first fight, the castle of Les Souches did fight, and some people did find dead, you know, at that occasion. So ask me what you want to ask me.
I'm looking at the chat here, Michelle, and there's another question out, and I think it's for the students also. And so we're going to have the students answer this one, but feel free to offer some insights as well. So this question is, students, what has this experience taught you about the power of story and the courage to share your story after we've learned from Michelle? So we've got some students that are going to address that question.
So this opportunity has taught us to use our voice and to advocate for things that matter to us.
Not only are we advocating for things that matter to us, but we're advocating for things that other people won't. So we took the opportunity in this experience to produce quality work and work that we developed using your voice.
This story has really helped us build up courage and confidence on how to, like they said, use our voice and really speak up for what we believe in and what we value, just like Michel did when he served in the French Resistance.
So you're asking a lot right here.
No, they were just responding to a question about how your story has impacted them, about how the power of your story and standing up has provided them courage. But one question, Michelle, that is for you is, one of the questions coming in is, were you able to stay in touch with other resistance fighters when the war was over?
To stay with some, you know.
Yeah. Were you able to stay in contact with the people that you were part of in the resistance when the war was over?
Listen, when I was out of the woods, they put me in the army. In fact, I was in the French army. So they put me in the army and I stayed in the army. The General de Gaulle didn't want all the officers to be away until he will say it. And he said it after the liberation of Paris in 1945. And we fought until after the liberation of Paris, we still had the German passing by. You know, Paris was above in the north, and we were in more than in the south of Paris, and the Germans were still trying to go back to Germany. So we had to fight for a little more than the liberation of Paris, for more than 1 month after that. But then, when we came out of the woods, I was put in a caserne. I was an officer, so I was in a caserne in Châteauroux, where I did stay for almost 2 years, because the General de Gaulle didn't want the officers to go back home. They were eventually disponible for the army, but I was not a career officer. I never went into the army to learn anything at all, so I was made lieutenant by the French government, but a lieutenant with no knowledge, if you want, military knowledge. So they didn't give me any job for almost 2 years. I published a newspaper during those 2 years. But yeah, somebody gave me a newspaper saying, I go away, take it. So I took it, and I took it. I killed it, that newspaper. I did kill it because the communists came in, and I didn't want their collaboration, if you want, in my newspaper. So I killed the newspaper. But the big newspaper of the area, a daily paper, offered me to be the director of the daily paper. I said, no, I don't want, because I will not be with you today. I would have to go all my life in newspapers. I know that by experience. If you are good in something, they want you. So I didn't want to stay in newspaper, but I spent 2 years in the military. I mean, as an officer in Châteauroux, 2 years.
And Michel, another question. I know the students know this answer, but not everybody on the call knows this answer. But another question for you that came in is asking, did your brother survive the war?
Did my brother?
Yeah, did your brother survive the war?
Oh, yes, he did. My brother, well, you know, they said he went to North Africa. He didn't like it in North Africa. Clandestinely, he went on a boat that was going from Casablanca to London. But to go to Casablanca from London, you will not go directly. You had to go to Canada to take a convoy and to go to England. So it took him 1 month to go to England. Then after that, in England, he said it during 1 month, morning or afternoon, I was an officer who was asking me questions. Where were you going to school? What were you taking in school? Where were your parents going to the, you know, buy food or whatever it is? They were knowing absolutely everything, asking questions about everything. And he said during my interrogation like that, 1 month, 2 men were arrested because they didn't have the answers. So he became an SAS paratrooper. But you know, the SAS were not fighting directly the German. Their job was to try to slow down as much as possible the German. He said, I learned everything. I learned to drive a locomotive, to drive absolutely everything, to try to slow down the German. That was the job of the SS. And there is something absolutely fantastic that did happen to me and my brother. I can say it to you, my dear. One day, my boss, Pearl, told me, you go to Paris, I need some papers from the government, blah, 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 blah. And she gave me a brand new car, a Lincoln Zephyr, all brand new. And I took some people who wanted to go to Paris, and in Paris, I made the taxi for, of course, there was nothing, there was not one way of communication. So I made the taxi for the 5 people that I took in with me. And after that, I said, I go to the apartment of my parents, 27 Rue Caumartin. And I arrived, 27 Rue Caumartin. I just stop in front of the door and I hear a car scratching in my back. And I look in the back mirror, you know, and I see a guy who jump out of the car, come to my window and say, when your brother make you a sign to take him, he gave me a name, a little village, can't you take him aboard? My brother and myself, 2 years later, we did arrive exactly at the same minute, 27 Rue Caumartin. You have to do it, huh?
I love it. Thank you. We appreciate that. We always love it.
It's a fantastic story.
It is.
We went to London, Paratrooper, whatever it is. I stay in the woods, you know, and we arrive exactly at the same second in Paris 27 Rue Caumartin. Do it, huh?
It's magic.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's something absolutely extraordinary. Extraordinary. 2 years later.
So we're going to move on to the next question here. We've got this next question is for the students. This comes from a 4th grade class, Mrs. Adams' class, and they have questions for the students here asking what was the hardest part of creating the book and why did we decide to create a comic instead of a book? So we have some students that are going to answer this question or these questions.
Answer the question, my dear.
So answering that question, the hardest part for me was making sure we were accurate with all the information we were given and trying to like stuff all of the information we were given into only 10 pages. So that was a big constraint for us. And yeah, that was probably the hardest part for me and my group and us as a team. The hardest part for me was probably the font size because we had our words all done and all figured out, except one thing that we didn't have was the font size. It wasn't the right font size, so it had to be bigger or a different font or something, and it messed up everything. So we had to cut down a bunch on our words.
We're going to follow up too with that second part of that question from Mrs. Adams of why we decided to do a comic instead of a book.
We decided to do a comic instead of a book because it creates a visual story and we could add details that you can't get from just reading text. So it gives you a better visual of what's actually happening.
So Deb, I'm going to swing back to you, you know, as you've heard all this and you've been part of hundreds of stories and you've heard the words of Michel, to put you in the hot seat here, you know, what are some of your takeaways or ahas, you know, from that? I mean, you know the process, you're involved through the email and communication, and you know these kids, but you're also kind of sit also a little bit on the outside, you know, you're not part of it day to day, and you've seen lots of different examples that you have heard these kids talk today. And Michel, what are some ahas or takeaways from your perspective? I'm curious, and I'm really putting you in the hot seat on that.
You are. Thank you. I think it's just impact. You know, I told you about the very first story, and I saw the impact of that small group of kids, but they did not work together on those projects. They worked individually, and they each did one, and then someone in the Jewish community chose the one to be published. And that was powerful. And typically it's one student either doing both, writing and illustrating, or one student writing and one illustrating, and I see impact. But the impact that you're creating is so much broader, because these kids are sitting down and talking about each and everything. You know, I love that paper that was highlighted in so many different colors and little notes off to the side. They really thought this through, and I so admire that. And I know that it's going to be an extraordinary outcome. I haven't seen the book yet, or the comic book, and I haven't been working on putting your book together, but we are working on it, Michel. And I'm just blown away by how broad that impact is when you work on a project the way you're doing it, Aaron. It's just amazing to me.
Well, you know, but what it is amazing for me is to see all those students, you know, writing, interested in that. You know, I wish that they would give an example to all the students in the world to watch things like, not because I did it, but because to be able to fight against something which is wrong. And you know that it is wrong. It's no use to just close your eyes, close your ears. You know, the contrary, fight. And what I give them as example is to fight. And I see, what is wonderful for me is to see that so many students, in fact, took it very seriously. Those who were here today and what they say, you cannot imagine, you cannot imagine how I feel, you know, I have no word to say it, how I feel moved, if you want. I fought with my gun in my hands against what they are writing today, but they are my following, because in fact, what I did so many years ago is what they do today with their book. They repeat what I did. And that should be an example to all the students in the world, me or somebody else, but to say, hey, guys, there is something else than fight. And let's go into learn and to go into studies and all that. And all the students in the world should be very aware of it is much more important, in fact, to learn your lesson, to learn in class, than to fight with a gun in the woods with the Germans. So they should keep on. That's wonderful for me to see that students could have taken my stories to make books about that. That's something absolutely extraordinary. And I was certainly not expecting that when I was fighting the Germans. You know, it's something that comes out from the sky all of a sudden, you know, like my decoration and all that. I never thought of that. And all of a sudden, boom, it's here, you know. I'm one of the last one, if not the last one, of the officers of the French resistance. You know, because I am 100 years old, so I was young, but to command people, you cannot command people if you are 16 years old. I was 22 years old, 21, 22 years old. So it's possible, but you see today I reach 100 and I have no followers in my own stories, but the fact that they go to such a story is wonderful because that gives them a spirit to eventually fight for what they don't agree with. That's it, my dear. Very simple, huh?
Yeah, it's just that simple. I think you hit the nail on the head there with some great insights. And I know you can't see all the students, but they have just as big a smile on their faces as you do. So we really appreciate it. Those very kind words. And I know this is something that will impact them beyond their school years as we
you know, for me, it's absolutely extraordinary to see your students taking my story, in fact, which is a very modest story, to write a book about it. But that the students can do that is for me the greatest reward, if you want, of the French resistance. To have today some young people who care about it, who take it as an example, in fact, to make a book, and making a book that goes in their mind, and their mind, they can make their own propaganda to their friend and other. That is the most important thing, to have some young people able to think.
Absolutely. That's what we try to do every day. And we've got a great group that has some very, very intelligent minds that are able to be part of this work. I wanted to share here real quick with everybody, and you too as well, Michelle, and everyone on this call. I put a link in the chat to the project website as we go to bring this to a close, because I know it's a short amount of time and we're here to celebrate the work. But on this page, by the end of today, the PDF of the comic with the students' insights and thinking will be on this webpage. And we also have included the ceremony from when Michel was awarded his medal. And down below is also all of the student impact statements of how this opportunity to work with Michel had an impact on them. And so every single one of the students' quotes are in here. We know we didn't have a chance for everybody to share. But more importantly, not just this presentation and this stuff is on here, the entire journey from start to finish. All the interviews with Michel, all the research, the pictures, as Deb talked about, the notes and the highlighting, and how are we going to pull from different texts and work with that, and how we connect to all the standards, and really humanizing the pedagogy of our work is all here. We just don't have the time to go through it all, but we did document that process, because just like you guys have shared today, it is important. We hope that it is a catalyst for others to do this type of work. And so the more that we can open up those pathways. And this is kudos to the educators that figure out how to make this magic happen every day, as well as the huge amount of resources and experts that came in to help us figure out how to tell a story visually, and how do we reduce words, and how do we do research when we say the word research? What does that look like? And so we just want to make sure that you're all aware. We'll follow up in an email with this link as well for you to check out all the work the kids have done from start to scratch, because it was a lot. And there was a lot of writing and revising and conversation to make this work happen. And so I wanted to make sure we plugged that there. And the last thing to share is, just as we wrap up here, to be respectful of time, is just to end with some optimistic closure, some final thoughts, and then I'll let Michel let you have the final word here as we wrap up. But I want to share just a couple last positive thoughts, besides the fact, and maybe the big thing, is how incredible these students were in this process. As we talked about already at the beginning, none of this happens in isolation. Just so people know, every single one of these students thanks to a book by me, will get a copy of the book when it's officially published. So that what we've shared here, we have an educator version and then a book by me that Deb is part of. There will be an official published book that will be available on the Book by Me website, which we'll link, and also available on Amazon. That will take some time, the publishing world. It is not a fast process. There's just a lot of, as anybody knows, what does anything takes time, but that will be available. And when that is, every kid will get mailed a copy, so they have their own official copy. So just know that that will be available. And I just want to highlight again, you can go back and listen to the comic from the voice of Michel and also hear the voices of the students in their thinking of why they drew and articulated and visualized the story the way they did. And that is where the sweet spot of all this learning is. And as you go through the website, if there's any questions for the teachers or students or us, you can always feel free to share out. But we appreciate all of you that have been part of this call, as well as all those that will be watching the recording. And so that is the wrap for us. But Michel, do you have any final words or anything you'd like to say before?
Oh, absolutely, my dear. Absolutely, because, you know, it is not because all of a sudden I received the highest, you know, reward that you can have in France. That's wonderful, that's beautiful, that's wonderful, that's all what you want. But for me, it has less importance than to know that young people can be interested in the story itself, because the story demonstrates something. So I am absolutely going for the young people once more. I am pleased to have that medal, but I am not as pleased than I am pleased with the young people.
Well, thank you for those kind words. And can, just so you can see them one more time, here maybe. There it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. There it is. There we are. Okay, sorry. Woo! Final glitch. I want to make sure, Michel, you get a chance here to see the students one more time. I know we've got lots of people on the call, but how about we all give Michel a respectful and courtesy round of applause and thanking him for being part of the program.
Listen, Aaron.
All right, and with that, we thank everybody. That is our presentation. Michel, is always such a pleasure to see you and hear from you. We can't wait. We'll get you the copy of the comic and all that good stuff here soon. And we appreciate everybody who joined the call here today. So thank you so much.
Aaron.
Yes.
Tell to all the kids that I give them a kiss. All of them.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, dear.
Bye.